The first thing that we as a committee thought was a really important aspect of getting your offer accepted is managing expectations with your client at your initial buyer consultation. And if we could expound on that a little bit, but the big thing is this market is not for the faint of heart. A lot of buyers walk into this market thinking that they're going to be able to make an offer 10 grand below asking and it's going to be accepted. You got to submit that bud immediately because it's just not going to happen. Inventory, I believe from 2019 is down from about 2 million listings nationally to about 400,000. And
75%.
Yeah, and that doesn't provide buyers with much leverage. So that's the first thing, is making sure that you're making sure the buyer understands the market they're purchasing in, so that they, when they're looking at properties, that they realize that the asking price is in many situations very much just a starting number and not necessarily where it's going to end up. You guys want to add on that at all?
Setting the expectation, making sure you're having that dialogue with your client in advance, because a lot of buyers, if you're afraid to have a very open conversation with your client and you don't set that expectation, that word expectation really stands out to me. You're going to get fired. They're going to think you as the agent are doing something wrong, and by the time they lose their third property, they're going to be calling other agents to see how they could be helped by them. And we all know as real estate professionals, it's not our fault. It's the market itself. But if you don't have that consultation with them and really tell them the true facts and figures, like Les was saying, I mean, that statistic Les just shared, down from 2 million nationally to 400,000, that's a powerful statistic. Having a script with them as far as, the asking price now is just the beginning price point, and it's more of a suggestion than anything else. And letting them know any listing that's livable is going to have 10 to 15 offers. And, from what I'm seeing out there, selling for 10, 20, 30,000, sometimes even 50,000 over asking price is very common. So set that expectation, because you're better off having them not buy a property from you now. Maybe they'll come back 12 months from now when things cool off. Versus them spreading the word that you're not a good real estate agent because you weren't able to find them a house. So setting that expectation and letting them know what they're about to really get involved in is super important.
I want to say something. So yes, I do agree with both of you. It's very important to a lot of the new agents and also experienced agents, and as myself too, I'm a new agent, and sometimes I forget to do, and I feel like I don't want to waste the time. I think it's a waste of time to do buyer consultation, but I think we all should get back to buyer consultations and just bring them in the office and discuss with them all these facts as what they should expect from the market, and just be prepared with a lot of patience. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, because this is, again, I seem to think the audience here might be newer agents in general, and talk about buyer consultations and stuff like that. And I used to get really intimidated with trying to get a buyer consultation or having a buyer come in the office. A buyer consultation could be at the house that you're showing. It could be at a local coffee shop. So I used to like to go meet that buyer at the property to set the rapport, and then invite them for a cup of coffee after and have a conversation with them. That's less intimidating than this, bringing them into the office. So when we say consultation is just a fancy word for have a conversation with them and be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to add to that.
And I think the big thing that one thing that you're going to spend 30 minutes to an hour, let's say, meeting with somebody, probably 30 minutes, on the high end most of the time, unless they have a lot of questions. But you're protecting your own time there quite a bit also. If you're showing properties to somebody who is going to not be willing to commit to the market that we're in, and they're going to just be scared off every time they get in a multiple offer situation, or they call for a final and best, and they're like, well, I don't want to go higher. That's totally fine. You put your best offer in, but you're going to protect yourself if you can mitigate showing somebody 15 properties because they don't know what they want, and they're not willing to pull the trigger because prices are too high. I think that's, you have to be kind of selfish with your time in this business in order to, stay profitable. And that's one way to really protect that. Set those expectations. You're not going to be showing property to somebody that is not ready to purchase in this market. So you're protecting that time, be able to help the people that are.
Yeah, it's great. 100%, 100%.
So the next thing we got is contract terms and strategies for those, for contracts, making sure you have the right terms in your initial contract just to make your contract stand out. We came up with a list of probably about 4 or 5 that are like definites you want to see right now. I always tell my buyers that I don't like playing games with like escalation clauses really. That put in your best offer up front. If we get the house, we get it. If we don't, we don't. But at the end of the day, you gave it your best. You gave it your best shot from start. A lot of people try to go in $1,000 above asking, $500 above asking, and then put an escalation clause in there for a couple $1,000s. And I've even done that and lost properties. I've had a listing agent tell me that it insulted her seller that they would only pay X amount of dollars for the house and go $1,000 above the best offer if someone else was willing to pay more. Like that was somehow insulting, and I didn't really get that logic, but it stuck with me. So I've definitely taken into account now moving forward.
But a lot of, I'm sorry, Les, a lot of sellers stand in this market, it looks like, at least to me, to not call for highest and best. They just pick the best offer because it's so overwhelming dealing with so many offers and so many showings. And it's best to advise our clients to do the best offer from the beginning. If they want the house, they definitely have to go as strong as possible, and comes down to terms, not just the amount, because the amount, it could be the best amount, but if the property might not appraise, which happens unfortunately because of how high they're going to sell right now. If you don't have some strong terms in there, you might not get it. You could go 100,000 over asking. If you don't have an appraisal gap, the seller is gonna see it equal to probably 0.
Yeah, appraisal gap guarantees, especially if you're financed, is going to be really relevant. Having something there, $10,000, $15,000, especially if you're going above asking substantially. I usually limit my appraisal gaps to if we go above asking down to the asking price. My justification is you, the listing agent, believe the property is worth this much amount of money. You told your seller this is what you think you get for it. So let's be reasonable. And if we're going 10 grand above because my buyer's very motivated, we'll do a $10,000 appraisal gap guarantee, make up that difference so that we don't lose the house because we went above what you thought it was worth. When they start asking for appraisal gaps that exceed, or are greater than what you're above their asking amount is, in my opinion, now they're becoming a little unreasonable. And I think you have an argument to stand that, listen, I think that 10 grand is, say you're 10 grand above, $10,000 is reasonable. If you want me to go 20 or 25, that's, I feel like that's not that's a listing agent that's being unfair. And then you have to talk to your client if that's something they're willing to risk or not.
Is that appraisal gap? Is that a form, or is that just another term?
The clause you put into the contract.
In additional provisions, you just read.
Actually, the sellers are now asking people to waive the appraisal, right?
And it happens.
And so on.
I'm working in Charical area now for a buyer, and we compete with 20, 30 offers. The starting point is the asking price, and they go up to 50 above for a townhouse, which definitely not gonna appraise.
Sure.
And then they ask for no repairs as is, whereas you have to waive the appraisal price. And when the client is like FHA or
They can.
conventional with low like cash,
Mhm.
You could-
never win at this time.
Well, that's actually one of our, the next point to kind of how to structure an offer. Do we have that as a talking point for
Yeah.
the contracts about trying to get your client not to go with FHA or government loans?
We mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid, if your client was qualified to be able to go conventional, a lot of lenders will push FHA. They're oftentimes incentivized to go FHA if possible. If you can get them into a conventional loan, you are more likely to have more leverage, because the perception from a seller is that it's an easier loan to get through, and there's gonna be less subject to repairs due from the appraisal.
But sometimes FHA, I mean, you could probably know that some FHAs, they're not FHA because they don't have any money. I have a client that they have a lot of money, their credit score is a bit lower.
Exactly,
That's the
why.
only issue. And then you could still void appraisal. I don't recommend people to do that necessarily, but if the client has $200,000 in the bank account and the house is 250,000 and you want to go 50 above, and you know, because we're professionals, we could do comps ourselves, or maybe we know an appraiser, or maybe we know a lender that could talk to their appraisal department and could check on the value of the property. Let's say the property could appraise for 250 and the buyer wants to go 50 over and they have the cash and they could void that appraisal. They could still take it out of the contract. The property is going to appraise for 250. The buyer is going to be is going to have to give that 50,000 out of pocket. But if they have the money, it doesn't matter. It just comes down to, at the end of the day, it comes down to the buyer to be mentally prepared for that and have the funds to support that. I mean,
That's also what's really important, to cultivate a relationship with a local lender, someone that you work with regularly, that has local appraisers. Because if you have your buyer coming in with a Rocket Mortgage loan and they're bringing people from Trenton down here to appraise properties, it's never going to appraise, especially down at the shore. They're never going to appraise. So having someone like, whoever you work with locally, if they're based in Atlantic City and you're selling houses in Atlantic City, their appraiser pool is going to be from the area. They're going to be able, they're from at least Atlantic County. They're going to know how to look and value a property in our area. That's very important. So if you're in Cherry Hill, you definitely want to have a lender that's in that area that pulls appraisers from that area intentionally, because they understand the market that you're in.
Is appraisal as important in a conventional as it is in FHA?
It's as important in the fact that the property has to appraise in order to get financing, but there's usually less subject to repairs that are due, because a FHA loan
it's more strict.
because it's government backed. They basically, if you ever get foreclosed upon, the government takes on that liability. So they make sure the property is in better condition. So it has to have, it can't be like any kind of fixer upper at all. There's not going to be a hole in the wall. I saw somebody had a house get flagged because it was a foreclosure, a HUD property that had a punched hole in the wall, and they flagged that we lost the house because we couldn't fix it. We weren't allowed to because it was a foreclosure, and the bank wouldn't do the repair on it. The $100 maybe.
Isn't that standard in a HUD property?
But that's the problem, though, is that the fact that you couldn't get into the property over literally that was what the only thing that was flagged.
Yeah.
You couldn't get in the property because of it. Okay, what else we got here? So obviously other terms, appraisal gaps are important. Limiting your home inspection. I don't suggest waiving home inspections ever. I know Miss Pleggy also, this is something you had talked about at a mastermind a year ago. We were up front here talking about how you saw a lot of agents that were like waiving inspections on the islands, and you thought they were crazy for doing that because they're sort of liability. I kind of definitely agree with that. I think you're taking on a lot of liability for no reason, when all a seller really cares about is not getting nickel and dimed. Like if the foundation's got a problem, a reasonable person understands that you're not going to buy a house with foundational issues. If the roof is, the roof needs to be replaced, that's one thing. But if the roof is obviously got bows in it, and there's some structural concerns with the rafters, again, that's something you have to get addressed. So I always limit my home inspections to a buyer agrees to purchase the property and as its condition, the exception of structural, safety, environmental deficiencies. In the event such deficiencies are found over the inspection period, the buyer retains the right to request remediation or terminate the contract of sale. If the contract is terminated in this way, the seller agrees to return any deposit monies within 3 business days. A lot of like jargon there, but basically, if it's got some major issues, if the septic is shot, that's covered under environmental. If it's some of the foundation, it's covered under the structural. If there's a safety issue, like maybe exposed wiring or something, that's covered under safety. It's very vague enough that you can get out of most deals, but it seems it kind of makes you feel protected that you're not going to cancel a contract over a ceiling fan not working or something. Let's see what else we talked about appraisal gaps, limiting home inspections.
What was the other thing?
What about escalation clauses?
Escalation clauses.
Escalation clauses, leading with your best foot forward, make an offer that your buyer feels is the maximum they could go.
I don't think
Not
that,
uncommon that houses are going 10 to 15% above their asking price.
at least with escalations, I don't think they're super effective now. I think a year and a half ago when I first started like using them, they're very effective in this market. I think a lot of agents have pulled away from that personally. You know, I think people are just going to final and best rather than playing an escalation game.
And with escalations, I think they'll come under scrutiny in the future where I believe personally they're illegal, because one of the escalation clauses, pieces of language says that the agent has to share with them
Bona fide offer.
an
The highest
offer that was submitted. You know, sharing someone else's offer to me, I think is very unethical and probably borderline illegal. So I don't believe they're,
I think that,
you know, if I'm a listing agent and I get an escalation clause, I'll tell their client right away.
yeah, I
Submit
think a
your
lot
highest
of
best.
agents kind of defer away from them. And
Yeah.
don't put them, you know.
No, I have had escalation clause offers where I will ask my seller if we go back to that buyer, like, let's say it's a $400,000 property and they have an escalation clause up to $500,000. I'll say to the seller, let's go back to them at $500,000, offer to them that will take it off the market and not entertain any other offers. And that has worked for me. And the buyers have gone right up to their peak number. And we've done that successfully.
And that's the obvious issue with the escalation clause. Anyways, you're kind of showing your hand a little bit, like prematurely.
You are.
You know, you're telling the seller, this is what I value your house at potentially.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be like, okay, well, this is what we value your house at now. You know, like,
Sure.
so it's that
So you
is-
could use it to your advantage in some respects.
as a, yeah, potentially. But I do think that it's oftentimes a little convoluted. The final point that we wanted to discuss was networking with top agents in your markets, in your prime market, whatever that is, your zip code. Like you mentioned, like physically taking people out to lunch and like giving them like closing gifts. I make sure when a listing goes on the market, like I usually will call the agent and discuss things about the property before I even have a buyer bring through the property, make myself known to them. When I make an offer, I always call the agent, discuss with them in kind of in detail what the offer is going to look like, ask motivation, you know, like what's the seller's motivation, what do they need to see in a contract that they really want, you know, does time, do they need more time to get out of the house, do they want to close in 3 weeks, you know, what do you need to see to be appealing, and are they going to consider FHA or conventional offers, or are they only looking for cash? Because I can save you a lot of time, but also you're going to stick out in their head that you're trying to, you know, value their client like they are. You know, you're trying to work with them to get the deal done.
And I also think because we're such a big office, we are one of the biggest offices in our area. I think it's very important to know what agents in our office do, because we have a lot of great agents that they do list a lot in our area. So I am surprised some people don't even know the people in the office, and it happens because I didn't know everybody, but now I'm trying to keep up with everybody that's coming and who's new and what is their primary area. So like that, if I introduce myself and you know me, I'm with you in the office, you know, other people could recommend me and talk, and same thing for others. You could that could also increase your possibility to get your offer accepted, because you know they know that you're in the office, they want to help you, and they will guide you through. If you're an agent, don't be a new agent, don't be shy to ask questions and introduce yourself to the experienced agents and the listing agents of this office. But obviously don't limit yourself to the agents in this office. Just get to know our area. We have a lot of amazing successful people in our area, you know. So Dan has some great ideas to take them out to dinner, lunch, you know. Hey, get them out for a drink. People are happy when they're drinking.
Yeah. Bring them out for cocktails.
I think in this market, it's incredible, the market's incredible, because I don't think that the buyer agents, you know, they don't even need to take your call anymore, because they know they're gonna get so many offers that, you know, like I find them to be less responsive now, because they know that they're just gonna get something. I'm currently working with a client that's, we put 6 offers on the property so far, and every one of them been over asking price, and we have not gotten, you know, the offer of contract yet. And I actually went, they had a home, the one this weekend, and I actually went to the open house without the client because she was busy. But, you know, I sat there in bed and said, listen, I'll do anything, you know. We'll come in. I even offered, and I said, I don't even know that, I said, I don't even know if this is ethical, but I'll give you half my commission. I said, I just need to get this client at home. You
Yeah.
know, because she's expecting and they want a home by June and it's getting crazy. And like I said, every home we've gone in, we went in at least almost 20,000 over, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just getting crazy.
In Egg Harbor.
Huh?
And I lost it.
My teammate went 50,000 over to a house in Absecon, 11 square feet rancher, and he didn't get it. And the 50,000, or for sure they're gonna get it because they did they weighted appraisal. So there was no appraisal contingency. There was inspection limited and 50,000 over asking for a rancher in Absecon, and they did not get it. To me, I was just I don't know. I'm sorry, but I feel sorry for these people. It is exhausting.
Was it cash?
No, it was a conventional mortgage, and they were doing $50,000
You know,
appraisal.
I have clients, I've been showing them houses for the last 2 years. 2 years. We've put like almost 18 offers.
Why didn't they buy last 2 years? Because there were better markets than these right now. They're not gonna buy in this market.
They were trying, but you know, they only like specific type of
Oh.
houses. When we put an offer on that, everybody likes it too. So we
Oh,
compete
Well, that's
with a lot.
usually the case.
We even, one time we went 40 or 45 above asking. We waived the appraisal, waived the inspection, right, everything. And we still lost it because they're conventional.
their conventional is good.
No, we can't compete with cash.
Oh, they're because it's cash.
We cannot compete with
Oh, wow.
cash. Cash offer killed us, and we're still looking. We have enough.
What is,
So the one thing I'll say, through this conversation, this just popped into my head. I think we need to start getting off the amount of so you're saying 50,000 over asking price. That's not much on a $1.5 million house.
No.
So
I'm
percentage
talking
is
like
really more
1,300,
important than, yeah, so percentage is really more important. And then the other thing that comes to my mind is that when you're having that consult with the buyer, and we spoke about this, is explain to them that if they did go 10% over or 15% over on, let's say, a $400,000 house, which, you know, you're talking $65,000. If the market's continuing at this pace, which it is, crazy enough, we may be up another 15 to 20% by the end of the year. So you're gonna pay it anyway. But the only difference is, rather than locking in a 4% interest rate now, you might be dealing with a 5% interest rate at the end of the year.
That's why.
So
I said it.
why not do it if you really want to own? Because I think we're gonna be, if you don't win this offer, you're gonna be in a worse situation. If you need to be in a house, maybe in the next 6, 7, 8, 9
Yeah,
months.
I think being very aggressive now, like with offers for buyers, is gonna save buyers a lot of money in the long term, because inventory is not gonna increase in the next 12 months. It's not substantially, not enough to stave off the demand. And interest rates are going up still. Inflation's out of hand, and it's gonna continue. The way they're gonna handle inflation is with interest rates.
That's right.
It's the only way they handle it. So we're gonna, there's a good chance, like they didn't want to go above, what, 5.5% this year, but it's very likely gonna go above 6, maybe 7 because of Ukraine stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what it was
what's pretty high right now?
4.5 today.
We're almost at the 5s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my first house, I'm old, so I could say this, but
Oh, come on,
my
stop.
first house, I paid 8.75% on my mortgage, and I thought that was a great deal.
I got you top
What do you?
13.2.
Yeah, I mean, so
Whoa. Yeah,
we've been
12.
for the last 12 years at this 3.5 to 4.5% rate, but this has been artificial for over a decade. So you don't really realize the true impact of, and then you take into consideration if you're dealing with the average household with a combined income of, let's say, $75,000 to $100,000, and they're paying 20% more in their gas tank, they're paying 20% more in their groceries, they're paying 20% more for clothes. That mortgage payment that they're gonna have, it's not gonna equal the property values. So that's when the market will start to come back down, but that does take quite some
Years.
time.
And every point that interest rate increases, property values have to decrease by about 10% to make up the difference in your
In terms of
month.
monthly payment, yeah. So the
Um,
challenge we'll have as a real estate community is we'll be in 2023. The new reality will be in front of us, but the seller who saw their neighbor's house sell the previous year when rates were at 3%, they're not gonna understand why my house is worth $100,000. So now you have to deal with a whole nother year of transitioning to, this is a
For these
2 year,
people
this is
to
a 2 year issue
expire
in front of
and-
us.
Yeah.
This is transitioning, so it's gonna
I
be
mean,
difficult.
I was in Charleston market,
Yeah,
but in the time where houses were in foreclosure, you know, that version, and then they start coming up, I would say 2014. So 2014, you know, there was a lot of houses, most of them foreclosure, and
Nobody wants one
nobody
of them.
wants to buy. And then the market boomed, and houses started to come up and it's still coming up until this moment. So there is no guarantee that at some point it's gonna come down, but it's still going up until now, like 2014.
well, there's
until now.
definitely a guarantee it will come down, because no matter what, any and every market's cyclical. It's just a matter of when.
Exactly,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
so, yeah.
But you're right, 2015 is
I
when the
don't-
market started to begin to recover. The market crashed in 08. It took till 09, 010 for the stock market crash to soften the real estate market in 2010. So it took a full 2 years after a complete meltdown economically for sellers to realize what their properties was worth. And then it stayed till about 13, 14, and then from 14, 15, it's been on this gradual, and then it got rocket fueled in the last 2 years. I thought we were ready for a correction 2 years ago, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, what I don't like to, like, this is why I'm saying this, because I don't want my buyer to expect that prices are coming down. They might not, like, don't wait on it. At the same time, I mean. if
Not
you-
this year.
Nothing
Keep
suggests that.
trying, I mean, keep trying. You cannot stop looking now because you have in mind, like, hey, I'm waiting for the houses to come foreclosure. Everybody saying that all the houses coming foreclosure.
I've heard that
What
in
if
the
not?
last 60 days. It's funny you said that. Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about?
Exactly. Like,
For- For buyer's agents, one thing I think especially for like a newer agent, like, and I'm, most people in this room aren't newer agents or not brand new agents, but for a newer agent, I think one thing you have to do is you have to check the MLS multiple times a day for new listings. A lot of people, they check when their client says, hey, I just saw this property. You gotta get out of that mindset. You gotta check it. I check every morning when I get up at 7 o'clock. I check before I go to bed. Usually when I'm in the office, I'm checking around midday, at least once or twice. I want to be informed, because the last thing I want to do is for my client to call me about a property that they just saw I have no information on. I find that one, it makes me feel unprofessional. But if you know the property that's fitting your client's needs comes on the market, and you're going to see that property that day, like I was showing properties 2 days ago at 7 p.m. I don't want to do that. I have a 3-year-old at the house. I'm not really, I don't feel great about showing houses that late at night. But we were one of the first people in that house. So when our offer is submitted, we're now the offer to beat. And I think that if you're gonna be pushing, especially showing buyers properties and making sure that you want to be that offer to beat, you have to prioritize getting the property as soon as possible. Because if you're 2 or 3 days out, there's a good chance they've already accepted an offer. And that's something that I don't think you can stress enough, that you gotta, unfortunately, you are at the whim a lot of times of the market right now, more than I think than the normal market really is.
I mean, when adding up to that, to checking the MLS, you don't really have to check the MLS. You could add yourself to a drip campaign as you add your buyers, and you get yourself houses all day and you look on your email and that's it. Because some people they're not in the front of the computer, they might be moving. It's hard to log in Paragon and when you're driving to check the MLS, but if you add it, if you add it on Paragon, you add yourself to a drip campaign, I think you could make it a bit easier. I do check the MLS like 100 times a day, because I'm either in the office or I'm home, and I do check it as much as possible, but sometimes it's inconvenient. So I just add myself to a drip campaign. I select for like every single buyer area possible, and I get myself emails, and I go through my emails, when I'm driving at the light, when I stop at Starbucks, when I, whatever I am, I just keep on checking. It's crazy, but I have to, because people.
Yeah, I found later as a drip, but I found that some of the other firms like Redfin or something like that, they'll pay me before the MLS will.
Yes.
They're good to have, a couple different ones.
I mean, we don't like it Redfin, but yes, they will.
Yeah, they seem to come out faster than some of the other ones, I think, yeah.
What do you think, Dan?
I was just, Madeline, just sort of a thought in my mind where if you're relying on just Paragon, you're gonna have an issue because a
Yeah.
lot of out of town agents are using
Yes.
like Bright MLS,
Monmouth
Flex
County.
MLS, Monmouth County. They don't care that they're not listing locally because they know that the market's so good, it's not even necessary anymore. So with our command system, if you put your client on a command drip, as Madalena was saying, the command has all the MLSs together, so you're not gonna miss out on a property by using command and putting your client on a command drip. Because if you're just doing a Paragon drip,
You're
your
just gonna-
client might call you and say, I just saw this on Zillow. You go to Paragon, well, wait a second, it's not on Zillow. It's listed with some, or it's not on
Right,
Paragon,
right.
it's listed with some other MLS that you've never heard of. So Command will help you, or Redfin will help you. Some of these third parties are gonna be a little bit,
More concise.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Bless you.
Command also has it so you can set it up to where within 30 minutes of it being listed on whatever MLS it'll be in your phone.
It's called instant,
Save searches.
save search instant. You have instant, daily, weekly, bi-monthly, and monthly.
Mhm.
So something to just keep in mind. Or set yourself up in Command as a client and then send yourself those if that's,
Something that,
yeah, something to think about.
I mean, we have to be very informed these days and.
Yeah, and call, if you have a client looking in an area, call on for sale by owners, call on, see if there's ever a withdrawn or an expired in that community, and call that agent to see if, that property owner would still consider selling at something, ridiculous.
So Melanie and I do calls 3 days a week together for like accountability and stuff. One of my clients, I couldn't get him into a property, ended up like making an offer on a house, didn't get accepted for whatever reason, but the house never sold. It got taken off the market some months later. I reached out to that agent, that had the listing. It was Paul Rickson down in Tuckahoe. He called his client. They ended up deciding to accept an offer that we made before, and got a deal done. It was completely off market and it was no drama. So that definitely can work. It's just a fact of you got to pick up the phone and make sure that you're trying to advocate for your clients as much as you can.
It's great work. Absolutely.
You could also do, I mean, I don't know how many of you have Mojo or edX, or I don't know, there's so many programs out there that suggest, but you could do neighborhood searches.
Yeah.
And you have a client that, they desire to live in Harbor Pines, in the Harbor Township, let's say, and, they know that that's where they want to live. So you go there, you pull out the numbers, the addresses, you call them, you tell them, hey, we have different scripts if anybody needs help with that, but you could get to match a seller with a buyer, and that the buyer is gonna love you. I have a buyer that I got 5 referrals from her just because I actually found her house off market, and I sold the seller house to my buyer, and the seller bought a different house from my investor. So I got like pretty much 4 sides from one person.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad Madalena brought that up. If you have a buyer and they're looking in particular areas, use whatever resources are out there to get the names and numbers of those property owners and cold call those neighborhoods. And say, I've got a buyer looking in your neighborhood that's willing to pay a ridiculous price. Would you be open to selling? I think is a great way to find a property for a buyer, especially in this competitive market. So that's a great suggestion. And the derivative to that, or byproduct to that, is you may pick up a listing as a result of that. So great suggestion. I'll be honest, that's a huge nugget right
Thank you,
there.
sir. Thank you.
What was the one app you said? You said Mojo?
Mojo, but you
That's-
have
it's
to
a
get,
predictive dialer.
yes.
Oh.
You have to get the neighborhood, you have to add to it because it doesn't come with it incorporated. So.
You gotta
the
pay
neighborhood-
extra.
Yeah, you gotta pay extra for the neighborhood search. And then there is another one, it's called Redx. Then you could do bin
Redx?
Redx, yes.
Like red and.
RED with letter X.
Yeah, red and EX.
And if you don't have the money, you could, I think, you could literally, does Realist offer phone numbers, Kathy? Does Realist offer property owner phone numbers?
No, but you could do being verified and it's much cheaper. Being verified is.
Been verified?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
It's $36 a month. There is no dialer in it. But you
Been
find a
verified.
neighborhood,
Mhm.
you get the numbers, it gives you emails too.
You pay for
And
Yellow Pages also for the same thing.
yeah,
Like,
So, Madalena, so on Been Verified, can you like draw a circle around an area and hit a button and it gives you the names and phone numbers and emails of property
I
owners?
don't know. I have it and I use it for some personal purposes only, but
I'm not even gonna ask.
don't ask. Don't ask about that.
She's looking for an ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm stalking my next husband here, but I'm joking. I want to see his assets, but no, it's you could
Can we buy phone numbers from you?
from me.
Yeah, since you're doing it for personal.
I mean, if any of you
Maybe
finds a
verify.
house, actually help Anna Marie gives you that. She found a house, she has a buyer for the house. I got her the information for the seller that she wanted to. So if any of you, I mean, I can't scoop out 200 numbers for you guys because I don't have the time, unfortunately. But I would be more than happy if you guys have 1, 2, 3, 5 sellers that you want to target. I'll give you the information. I'll do it.
And that's
you know.
from real estate.
It's being verified. It's called.
I'm
It's a
also
company.
willing to help as well. So just, shoot me a text or email. You know,
Yeah.
If it's reasonable, I have no problem helping out.
Yeah, of course. After like it takes me literally 2 minutes to do that. It's fine.
I was just saying I have to jump, but if I was a new agent going in this particular market right now, there's 2 things I would do. I would get a Mojo dialer, like Madalena suggested, and I would literally get every single name and phone number of every single homeowner in the market I wanted to serve. And I'd spend 4 to 5 hours a day using the predictive dialer and just asking, hey, have you ever considered selling? And if so, I'd love to come over and tell you what your home's worth. That's literally all I'd be doing right now. If in this market, if I just started out. And there's other resources to get phone numbers that you could put into the dialer. Or like Madalena says, there's an add-on that you can pay extra for through Mojo Sales that will get you property names and phone numbers. But I would be just calling hundreds, thousands, to be honest with you, at that. And you will get business from that.
One thing, don't call, do not call lists.
Yeah, scrub it.
I keep on like getting first, like the office is been reinforcing that, and I got in. The person that got really upset with me. So just if it says do not call, don't call them, don't bother them, leave them alone. You could, with text, you shouldn't do that either. Never mind, don't call, don't bother,
Yeah.
don't text.
Honor the do not call us is
Yes,
the
yes, don't, but
moral to the story.
yeah, but it's effective. How Dan said that's the most effective way to get business. And if you see new houses popping in the office and you want to do an open house, I will do it even during the weekdays. I wouldn't wait to the weekends. Right now,
Yeah.
people make the time and come to your open house, and you could get the buyer. You're gonna get the buyer. It's somebody from your office. They know you. As long as the buyer is going in with a strong offer, you're gonna have someone from the office, and you could put it under contract. Before the weekend comes and gets you crazy.
I have for another company of mine, I have a predictive dialer, Mojo, as a matter of fact, and I have someone that I pay to make my phone calls, and she makes 850 dials a day, and she speaks to anywhere from 30 to 50 people a day. And if you were to be able to do that in your business, you'd probably pick up a listing a week. So
Wow,
don't
that's
be
good.
afraid.
That's a good.
Yeah, I do it for a different reason. I buy property, so that's what I do it for. But it would work. It would serve the same purpose as getting listings.
We're competing against you.
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Competing against
The
you.
properties that Dan buys,
You're
I
always
don't think
competing
that's.
against me.
I got a letter in the mail, honest to God, it actually was on a listing that I talked to the staff, and the letter said pretty much, we pay cash, we have no closing costs, it was like.
It's
5 things.
probably my letter.
That other wholesalers, but yeah.
Yeah, or
it's-
another.
it's
You probably get
brutal.
about 5 of them.
Yeah, it's like brutal,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
they'll do for these listings.
Did it have a caveman on it?
Now,
said we buy ugly houses?
Ron Perfect, Ron something.
But you'll be surprised. I know, I have one deal right now that's happening to me, and nothing wood, I hope it's gonna go through. But you'd be surprised that these people that they're out of state and they bought some properties here, they're willing to let it go for the mortgage amount, or sometimes they don't even have a mortgage and they let it go for like really low price compared to the market value. So you could find people like that too by calling, and they're willing to just sell it for me. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm out of state. It's a headache for me. So you could match it with one of your buyers and get such an amazing deal on that, and you get your 6% commission. You have both sides. So don't be shy of calling.
Yeah.
It's-
Absentee owners are the best one.
Good techniques. I've actually
Or by yourself.
I've actually
Or by yourself.
Yeah,
connected with
I got everyone right now.
agents in different offices. because I know that they canvass certain areas.
Yeah.
And I kind of contact them to say, hey, do you have anything coming forward?
Yeah.
I have a question that's outside the thing, something that I get to handle. I do have a property listing that's coming available in spring, and I already have a buyer for it that I know wants it, and if I can get that buyer in, I know I can get the listing for their house. How do I ensure that that buyer gets that listing?
You get a listing agreement signed with the seller.
So, yeah, so you're talking, you have a listing,
I have a listing that's, I know it's coming available in spring. They gave it to me.
Right.
I already have a buyer for that, all right?
You have a
But
listing
once I
agreement
list
signed?
it, I want to make sure that they get it because there's a contingent.
so I would talk to your seller and explain that you have a buyer that this fits their needs. Is there a number that they would be willing to accept that they would take the property without going to the market at all? So like basically, if they say that if the guy that has a 250, they say, well, for the house, if I put it on the market, I'll accept 270 and not put it on the market. You don't come up with a number, obviously, because
We're not allowed.
right, you have to, that's the number they have to come up with. And are they comfortable with doing that? Because it might potentially cost them some money. Explain that all to them, but also say, listen, this could be a no nonsense transaction. That's gonna be no stress because it's never on the market. You're not gonna be strangers in your house. You're gonna be very, very easy. But your buyers are gonna pay a premium for that. And you gotta make sure the buyer understands that they're gonna probably pay more than at least market value, probably a little more than market value for that convenience.
How can you take a listing without putting it on the MLS?
You do it all the time.
Yeah, you
There's
don't,
always tons of off-market sales.
Yeah, all the
It's not a
time.
requirement, as long as your seller agrees to it.
Yeah, there's a form that you can have a seller sign if they don't want it on the MLS.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you just said you have a pocket listing, by definition, you have a listing that's not in the MLS that the seller's willing to sell, correct?
Yeah.
That's what a pocket listing is, so plenty of pocket listings that sell without using the MLS.
And you only secure with commission that they sign.
But
the
again, by
listing.
them not using the MLS, as Les mentioned, they are potentially
Mhm.
losing out on more money for their home because it's not exposed to the entire market. So you have to explain that to them. And it's risk versus reward. If the buyer that you have is willing to waive all their contingencies and, it's a really, really good buyer, hey, listen, this is a no nonsense buyer. They're incredibly strong. You don't have to have people traipsing through your house. Maybe you want to get, what would be the number that you would consider without putting it on the MLS? They may say, there is no number. I want to put it on the MLS.
Okay.
but
Thank you.
that is definitely a great way to potentially double end the deal. I would have it in writing, like basically explain, what you explained to them, to call them on the phone and say, listen, this is the situation. I'm going to follow with an email, explain all this again. So there's no miscommunication, because God forbid they try to sue you a year from now saying that, oh, he manipulated me into, selling my house off market. You want to have it in writing somewhere that that's not what you did. And make sure that, that you have that, paper trail, because that doing a deal like that could potentially open yourself up to some liability.
If it's not documented.
There's a one-time listing agreement also. that
Yeah,
You can have the seller sign that they agree to show the house to this particular buyer.
It's also a good way to get off market listings in general.
there's a question, guys. Thoughts on farming with letters and postcards versus cold calling. I don't like postcards, but if you guys have.
It's the same conversion rate, postcards and letters to straight cold calling. It's about
Same thing.
I mean,
the same conversion rate. The only difference
But
is
it's
cold
more
calling is
expensive.
cheaper
more
than
labor intensive.
postcarding. So it just depends on what your comfort level is. Nothing wrong with doing both. Whoever posed that question.
So I mean, Jessica in Little Egg Harbor, she built her whole business up. That's her number one marketing is postcards.
Yeah. there you go.
Like she does like 6 or 7 to the same neighborhood in a row, like every week for 6 weeks or something. I forget her mastermind last year, in March of last year. Like she mentioned that, and it was, I thought it was very, I thought it was really awesome because I never saw. I've done postcards a few times, never saw any return on it. The cold calling just is very labor intensive, unless you have an OSA that's going to do the work for you. But
Yeah.
if you're going to be making the calls yourself, you're going to be spending, it's a decent amount of upfront costs because you're going to spend $150 a month on Mojo. You're going to have, you're going to have to get the three call dialer in order to make it, time effective. There's, there's a little bit of cost of entry, a little bit of there's a little bit of a learning curve to get good at that. And you gotta get used to people telling you to, piss off. And that's a big thing that a lot of people don't like being told no several hundred times a day. if you have thick skin and you get through that, it is a very cheap way to get business,
Yeah, correct.
but other
You
options,
mentioned you had somebody do it for you. There
Yeah.
are companies that will make calls for you.
Yeah.
100%, yes.
It's called ISAs.
They're called ISAs, and if you type
They're
it
called
in,
what?
inside sales agents, if you Googled it, there's probably 20 companies out there that can service.
So
your
usually around
needs.
$10 to $15 an hour.
No, you could get them for $85 an hour. You could get the better one for 15, I think, but you could get one and
Yeah,
train
with
them.
ISAs, like Madalena said, you could spend a little bit more for an already trained one where the company will continuously train and hold them accountable, or you get one for cheaper and take on the personal responsibility for training them. and holding them
Yeah.
accountable. So, all right, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think,
Anything else, guys?
I have one last question. In your opinion, as I'm a new agent, guys. so-
Congratulations.
Thank you. When you say a strong offer, one of you mentioned it, presenting a strong offer. In your idea, in your opinion, what does a strong offer look like?
So-
$10 to 15%.
so I'll give you an example. So there's a property down in County Courthouse right now that's for sale, ton of activity. They had 5 offers in the first day. Between myself and my team members, we were 3 of those offers. Right now, one of my buyers, they call for final and best at the end of the week. But one of my buyers is the offer to beat person, so to say. He's 15 grand above asking. He limited his home inspection. He can do a 4-week close. And he is allowing, they have, the septic has to be replaced. So, basically with the septic install, we're going to work with the seller to try to accommodate that to happen, convey that in however way we can. And there's, a couple ways we could try to do that, but trying to make sure that makes it as drama free for the seller as possible. So, that's, and we went in there aggressive to start, but the house is only 180,000. We were 15,000 above, so.
So the thing is, you have to collect as much information if possible from the listing agent, and based on the information you will collect from, thank you, Dan. From the listing agent, you should make your offer like that. Obviously, some listing agents are not gonna maybe pick up the phone or even give you any information. But if you could, I ask, it doesn't hurt to ask, but I tell them, do you have any cash offers? And they're like, well, some of them they say yes, some of them they say I can't tell you that. So, then my next question is anything your seller is looking for in particular, like a longer closing date, a quicker closing date, then
Waiving inspections, those would be work.
is there any terms that will make my offer stand out of others? So if there are some of them, they're gonna give you some info, some of them they won't. If you see that they're resistant and they don't want to give you any information, you can just like, I'm just trying to help my people, they love the house, you give them a bit of explanation. Sometimes they soft up, sometimes don't, and then they will then after that you could base your offer. But I will go in this market, I will go at least 10% over asking, 5 to 10% over asking at least. And I will work on the terms. I will make sure that I have a good appraisal gap. If I could limit my inspection, Kathy and him doesn't like take inspections out. I don't really like taking inspections out.
For informational purposes only, you don't have to
But
ask for it first, but you want to do that.
But if you do it for information purposes only, you're pretty much giving the right of the buyer a weight of backing out. So if the buyer doesn't like the inspection results, right? They might say to you that, yes, I'm okay with that, but then they're gonna do the inspection. That happened to me, and that's why I'm saying this. Then they turn around, they say, well, this house is horrible, I don't want it. Then you might lose the deposit and they might get mad. So you gotta be very careful with information. If you say information purposes on, just to make sure to protect your buyer and explain that very clear to what it means, information purposes only. I rather put as is, I'm willing to buy the house in as is condition, and that's kind of a gray area because you buying the house in as is condition, but you're not saying that you're gonna buy it either way. Like you're just saying that you're not gonna ask for repairs.
One thing I do a lot also is I will do my initial deposit pretty low, like $1,000,
Yeah.
and I will do my secondary deposit pretty high after inspections.
Yeah.
A lot of people will leave it standard, but if you do after the inspection period, that will also protect your buyer from having too much money locked up in escrow that you might not get back if the seller tries to hold their deposits. You know, that's, I'll use like for this property, we're putting $10,000 down. So we put $1,000 down initial and then 9,000, you know, after inspections are over. So it shows that you're very committed to the property, but you're not going to commit before, you know, you're not gonna basically lock up 10 grand beforehand.
I mean, if your person is a contractor and or a flipper or investor, like information and purposes only, no inspection, that doesn't matter because they're experienced buyers, you know, so they're easy to deal with. But if you're talking about a first-time home buyer, do not take that inspection out. You're doing yourself a favor by not doing that, you know.
Okay.
And if you also wanna make your offer more strong, as you said now, when you call the other agent, sometimes if your buyers are flexible with the closing dates, that's something that the sellers like. I'm not, you know, supposed to, I don't wanna close fast, I own my home, like, I've been asked a lot, like, is your buyer like paying rent or out of lease at any time, because we don't wanna commit to a date.
Right.
They want like 4 or 5 months. closing.
Yeah, just gather
You'll
as
run
much
back.
information as possible from the listing agent, sure.
I mean, if your buyers have a house or doesn't pay rent, that makes it easier for the seller.
You know, like I had a deal closed last week that the seller is moving to like Massachusetts somewhere. So we ended up doing like a 75-day rent back. We give them enough time to basically move. And then, you know, basically the buyer got paid a decent premium for them to stay there for, you know, for an extra 3 months. So, you know, there's always an angle. It's just a fact of figuring out how to find the angle that works best for that seller and, you know, what they were looking for. But anything else before we wrap it?
Does news letters to sellers, are they like personal letters to sellers? Are they beneficial at all?
So a lot of agents won't actually show them to the seller at all, and they'll
I
explain.
think it's.
So I've had buyers twice go to the property after we saw it without me there, without me knowing, and talk to the property owner. That has worked both times. They basically said, we love this house, we're desperate, like, you know, what does it take to get this house? I don't necessarily recommend that because they don't have an agent now, they're going to commit to things, but when you have the one-on-one connection, that might work. But when you're just a letter, in my opinion, it seems very campy or very cheesy. It's like, yeah, you're trying to manipulate the seller. And that's how it's going to be presented to the sellers, that this person was told to do this, write this letter, you know, and it comes off like most people don't care that, you know, you want to raise your kids in this house. They want to see what you're going to pay them to move here. And unfortunately, it's just the reality of it.
So you're allowed to go to the buyers directly?
You shouldn't, but people do it. You know, there's nothing illegal about knocking on someone's front door, but you know, I wouldn't, you know, but I've had buyers do that. You know, just show up. Oh, I was across the street. I knocked on the door. Just tell them how much I love their house. Okay, all right, sure. Yeah, great.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully, there's some value there.